Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SPURS NBA Wednesday. Got a bunch of games on the board. As far as Tuesday night, I had a good one. Went 4-1. Yeah, having a really nice little run here. 2.5 weeks of pretty consistent winning. So things are going pretty well for me. Hopefully that continues. NBA, let's go.
I mean, is Cooper Rush worth 2.5 points?
I would hope Quinn Ewers put up a decent stat line against Arizona State. If he didn't, we have a real problem.
You can say the same thing about Creighton. Okay, they had the one good game against Kansas at home.
When Toast talks about the kicking market, it's like some earth is flat shit.
Andy, true or false, this is going to be a dog walking.
Dog walking. This is my dog walking of the day. I think it's going to be very ugly. Dog walking. I think this is going to be ugly.
Hey, get the sauce. First up, we got Detroit on the road at Indiana. The Pacers are laying 6.5 points at home here. Total sitting at 229.5. Projected score: Pistons 109.9. The Pacers 117.5. In the last 10 games, the Pistons are 22nd offensively, 5th defensively. Strength of schedule 6th. Pacers 9th, 2nd, and 9th. Pacers have been playing some defense, man. You love to see it. As far as injuries go, Detroit will still be without Jaden Ivey. That's not new. He's been out for a while now. On the Indiana side, Nembhard has just been added to the injury report. He's listed as questionable. Other than that, Pacers should be good to go. But Nembhard's a big one. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But anyway, let's get into this matchup. Indiana has owned this rivalry. Detroit is 1-6 against the spread in their last 7 matchups against the Pacers, and the total has gone on. Well, actually, check this out. So the total is 4-1 to the under in the last 5 meetings, but in the last 13 meetings between the Pistons and Pacers in Indiana, 11-2 to the over. So if you've been blindly betting Pacers and over every single time the Pistons come to Indiana, you are doing quite well. So Pacers and over if you're into trends. But anyway, let's match these two teams up. And right off the bat, if you're on Indiana, you like the fact that Detroit has been struggling against the pick and roll. They're 20th in the NBA in points allowed via the pick and roll. Indiana loves running the pick and roll, 6th in frequency, 7th in efficiency. So a favorable matchup there. You look at guys like McConnell, guys like, obviously, Halliburton. So it should be a good matchup for the Pacers there. Also, the Pacers have a significant advantage in the turnover department on both sides of the court. Pacers are 7th defensively, 4th offensively. Pistons 28th and 16th. So Pacers should be able to force a lot of turnovers here. And let's be honest, this Pistons team is just trending in the wrong direction. In their last 6 games, 2-4 against the spread, 2-4 straight up. Compare that to the 12 games before that, things were looking bright for the Pistons. They were 8-4 against the spread, 10-2 straight up. Pistons were trending in the right direction, seem to have hit a wall here. Look specifically at the offense. In the 12 games before, when they were doing well, offensive rating almost up at 117. It's down to 106 now. So the Pistons offense has just fallen off a cliff here. Now, Detroit loves to take those short mid-range shots. In fact, they're first in frequency in the paint in the last 10 games. That does play into the weakness of the Pacers defense. So there should be some opportunities for the Pistons to score points here. But this is a Pacers defense. We mentioned it before. Out of nowhere, I mean, the last 9 games, opponent effective field goal percentage under 52%. A defensive rating of 107. So this Pacers team is playing some defense right now. I don't know how we don't just follow the trend here and lay the 6.5 with the Pacers. The reason I haven't yet is right here. Nembhard is questionable. If you remember early in the season, the Pacers were struggling without Nembhard on the court. In fact, they went 2-10 against the spread in the 12 games he missed. Now, this was back in November, December. How much of a factor is this? I mean, it's almost 2 months ago now. I don't know if we should just disregard this. I'm a little hesitant to lay the 6.5 with Nembhard being questionable, but in my opinion, it would only be Pacers here. Maybe a Pacers team total over. Gun to my head, I would probably go over as well. I guess there's a chance I end up betting Indiana, but as of right now, it's Pacers or pass. Toronto is on the road in Washington, and you saw this right. The Wizards are catching 7 at home. That's not weird. The Raptors are laying 7 points on the road. What is this world we're living in where the Raptors are 7-point road favorites? Total for this one sitting at 230.5 or 231. Score projection, Toronto 118.8, Washington 115.5. In the last 10 games, the Wizards have been basically the worst team in the NBA. You don't need me to tell you that. They're 30th in offensive rating, 29th in defensive rating. They have played the 5th strongest schedule in that span. In fact, they're 1st in strength of schedule in the season. So maybe we can cut the Wizards a little bit of slack. They played the strongest schedule in the NBA, but still, this team, probably the worst team in the NBA. Meanwhile, you look at the last 10 games for the Raptors. Who is this team? They're 17th in offensive rating, 8th in defensive rating in their last 10 games, 7th in strength of schedule. So the Raptors are playing some teams, and they're playing some basketball. In terms of matchup history, the Raptors have owned Washington. They're 7-2-1 against the spread in their last 10 matchups against the Wizards, 8-2 against the spread in their last 10 trips to Washington. So betting Toronto against the Wizards has definitely been profitable, and this has been an under series. On the last 11, 3-8 to the under, 2-4 to the under in their last 6 trips to Washington. So if you're a trends person, Raptors and under. But anyway, let's talk injury reports. Quickly is not back yet. He's still out. Kelly Olynyk is also listed as questionable. On the Washington side, Sarr is listed as questionable. Still no Brogdon. That's not new. He's been out for a while. So let's talk about this matchup, and we need to start right here. What the hell is this? We're up to 7 games now, so this is no longer an adorable little 2 or 3 game stretch. The Raptors are playing some defense, and I'm talking about a 105.5 defensive rating over a 7-game span. That's a solid sample size there. Opponent effective field goal percentage at 50%. The Raptors are playing better defense than any other team in the NBA. Now, it's only 7 games, but this is crazy. Look at the defensive rating in the previous 11 games, 124. So out of nowhere, Toronto is just a lockdown defensive team, and the results reflect that. In their last 7 games, they're 6-1 straight up, 6-1 against the spread, 6-1 straight up. The Raptors are playing some defense, man. Compare that to the previous 11 games where they were 1-10, 3-7-1 against the spread, and they're matched up against a Washington Wizards team that has just hit rock bottom. In their last 12 games, they have an offensive rating of 103, absolutely terrible, worse than the NBA. They have a defensive rating of 122. Absolutely terrible, worse than the NBA. This legitimately might be the worst offense in the NBA and the worst defense in the NBA right now. Although, like I said earlier, they have played a strong schedule. So, I mean, even though it's the Raptors laying 7 on the road, I still would lean towards the Raptors. I'm not going to lay 7 on the road with Toronto. There's no way that elite defensive stretch the Raps are on can continue. So I'd probably go under. You know what? I'll probably go Wizards team total under. How about that? So the Raptors defense, okay, let's ride that. I don't really trust the Raptors offensively a ton, even though against this Wizards defense, anyone could score. But give me the Wizards team total under in this one. Am I actually going to bet this game? Probably not. Next up is Brooklyn on the road at Charlotte. The Hornets are laying, looks like 3 here across the board. Total down at 204.5, 205. Actually, it's mostly 205.5. Projected score here, Nets 103.8. Hornets 109.7. In the last 10 games, the Nets have been playing some bad basketball. You probably didn't need me to tell you that. In the last 10 games, they're 29th offensively, 22nd defensively, 8th in strength of schedule, though. So we can at least cut the Nets a little bit of slack. They've played a tough schedule. The Hornets in the last 10 games are 19th in strength of schedule. But the efficiency numbers look way better, 16th and 10th. Here's the situation here, though. We got some injuries on the Charlotte side. Well, first we'll talk about the Brooklyn side. Ben Simmons is back, and that matters. I know Ben Simmons catches a lot of hate, but that definitely matters. We'll talk about it. Still no Cam Thomas for Brooklyn. Still no Cam Johnson. Clowney is out as well. On the Hornets side, good Lord. No LaMelo, no Brandon Miller, no Josh Green, no Mark Williams, no Cody Martin. So the Hornets are absolutely wrecked in this game and still somehow laying points. That just goes to show you how bad the Nets have been. In terms of matchup history, Brooklyn has not had problems going to Charlotte. They're 12-4 against the spread their last 16 trips here. So betting the Nets on the road in Charlotte has definitely been profitable. And now they're going into Charlotte with Ben Simmons back, and it does matter. In fact, look at the last 14 games without Simmons. A 100.9 offensive rating is so bad. 118 defensive rating. The last 14 games with Ben Simmons, 110 offensive rating, 115 defensive rating. So the Nets are significantly better on both sides of the floor when Ben Simmons is out there. And also look at the rebounding numbers, 48.3, 48.36, 50.96 with Ben Simmons. So the Nets are better offensively, they're better defensively, and they're a better rebounding team with Ben Simmons on the floor. And check this out. Look at the shooting. Ben Simmons, obviously not known to be a shooter. In fact, he gets made fun of for his jump shot. But the Nets shoot a hell of a lot better when he's on the floor. True shooting percentage, 51.5% in the last 14 games without Simmons, 56.65% in the last 14 games with Simmons. So yeah, Ben Simmons can't shoot, but the team shoots a lot better when he's out there. And you know what? It reflects in the results. The last 14 games without Ben Simmons, 2-12 straight up, 3-11 against the spread. The Nets are actually 8-6 against the spread of the last 14 games when Ben Simmons plays. So betting the Nets with Ben Simmons active has actually made you money. Meanwhile, when we flip it over to the Charlotte side, it's kind of the same thing here. With no LaMelo Ball, they have a 103 offensive rating in the last 12 games without him. I mean, that's terrible. 111.6 when he plays. So kind of the same thing with LaMelo Ball, and he's not playing in this game. And just like on the Brooklyn side, it reflects in the results. Maybe not ATS, 6-7-1 against the spread in the last 14 with him, 6-6 against the spread in the last 12 without him, but 111 straight up. They are 1-11 straight up in their last 12 games without LaMelo Ball, and they're not just missing LaMelo Ball. They're missing Brandon Miller, Josh Green, Mark Williams. They're missing everybody. So how are they laying points here? I mean, maybe you can point at the perimeter defense. There's not a ton of things Charlotte does great, but they actually have been a great three-point defense above the break. In the last 10 games, they're first in defensive efficiency out there. Brooklyn does like to shoot that shot. So, okay, maybe there's something, a positive angle for Charlotte. But still, I mean, that's not enough. They should not be laying points here, in my opinion. I took Brooklyn at plus 3.5. I'm on the Nets. Next game, Denver on the road in New York. The Knicks are laying 3. Looks like mostly 3 here. Total sitting at 239.5, pretty much across the board. Projected score 109.8 for Denver, 114.2 for the Knicks. In the last 10 games, these two teams are actually really similar. Look at the last 10 games. Nuggets are 5th offensively. The Knicks are 4th. Defensively, the Nuggets are 16th. The Knicks are 15th. Strength of schedule, 15th and 12th. So these two teams, very similar, very even matchup here if we're going by the last 10 games. Injury-wise for Denver, the Nuggets are good to go. No injury designations on the Denver side. On the Knicks side, same as it has been. Still no Mitchell Robinson. Obviously, he hasn't played all year. Josh Hart listed as questionable, but he's been listed as questionable basically every single game, and he continues to play. So if I had to make a guess, I would say Josh Hart is going to play in this game. So what do we think of this matchup? Well, the Knicks own Denver, man. 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 against the Nuggets. 1-4 straight up. Nuggets have had some problems with this Knicks team. Now, in this particular matchup, the first thing that jumped out was this new Denver team, right? This new Denver team loves to run the fast break. They're 8th in transition frequency. They're good at it. They like to get out and run. Pretty much the exact opposite of the Denver Nuggets team we knew from last season. And the Knicks have struggled defensively in transition. So this should be a positive matchup for the Nuggets, right? That's the first thing I thought of. But the thing is with this Knicks defense, they're trending in the right direction when it comes to defending the fast break, because they were like 23rd, 24th. They're now 18th in defensive efficiency in transition. And if you remember, they just played Memphis. I bet Grizzlies plus 3.5 because the Grizzlies have one of the best fast breaks in the NBA. They beat the dog shit out of Memphis. So I think the Knicks defense in transition, I don't think that's an angle we can play anymore. They seem to be doing a much better job defensively against the fast break as of late, so I don't think we can play that angle anymore. Another angle I like for the Knicks here, in the last 10 games, no offense takes more shots at the basket than the Denver Nuggets. They're 1st in frequency, 5th in efficiency. Want to know who has the best rim protection in the NBA right now? Your New York Knicks. 1st in defensive efficiency at the basket in the last 10 games. So you like that if you're betting the Knicks. That being said, you can say the same exact thing on the other side of the court, because the Knicks are 3rd in shot frequency at the basket, and the Nuggets have been playing good defense at the rim. So both of these offenses have been attacking the basket a lot recently, and both of these defenses have protected the rim well. So that angle applies to both sides. Something else that applies to both sides, offensive rebounding. In the last 10 games, the Nuggets are 4th in offensive rebounding rate. The Knicks are 2nd, and both of these teams have struggled rebounding on the defensive side of the ball. So on paper, both of these offenses should have plenty of second chance opportunities. The Nuggets have done a great job defensively against the pick and roll, which should hurt the Knicks, but they've really struggled against spot-up shooters. Knicks love that. They love kicking it out. And also, we have to ask, how good do we think this Denver Nuggets defense is? Because they're definitely trending in the wrong direction. In their last 6 games, they have a defensive rating over 118. In their last 2 games, over 127 against Chicago and Minnesota. The only thing they did well on the defensive side of the ball in that game is forced turnovers, over 16%. Probably not going to happen against the Knicks. The Knicks do a great job protecting the basketball. So this Nuggets defense not playing its best right now, and this Knicks offense the complete opposite. They seem to be on one. In their last 8 games, offensive rating over 123, effective field goal percentage over 57%. Look at their last 2 games, over 135. offensive rating. So you got a Denver defense that's doing this. You got a Knicks offense that's doing this. I definitely like the Knicks to score some points here. Do I like it enough to lay the 3? I'm on the fence. It's either going to be Knicks -3 or Knicks team total over, because I like the Knicks to score. I don't 100% trust the Knicks defense, especially against a Nuggets offense I think is very good, fully healthy. I think it's very possible Denver's offense could have its way with the Knicks defense, even though they are playing better. So I'll go Knicks -3 if you can get a 2.5, or Knicks team total over. It's all the way up at 120.5, something like that. But I like the Knicks to score points. Maybe look at one of the Knicks spot-up shooters. Let's see who has the highest frequency in that department. 1 second. Knicks spot-up shooters. Knicks spot-up shooters. 1 second, sorry. Knicks spot-up. OG Anunoby, Deuce McBride, Josh Hart. Well, Josh Hart's questionable, but that's who has the highest frequency in terms of being a spot-up shooter. So, yeah, Knicks team total over, Knicks -2.5 if you can get it. Next game. Sacramento on the road in Philadelphia. The Sixers are catching 7.5 points at home. Total sitting at 228.5. Not really going to spend any time on this one. The Sixers just played a game. They look great. They've now won 3 in a row. Score projection here, Philly's 107, Sacramento 114. Philly dead last in defensive rating in the last 10 games. The Kings 11th and 14th in their last 10 games. Like I said, I don't have a ton of interest in this game. We'll talk about it on the live show next. Chicago on the road in Boston. The Celtics are laying 14.5. Total sitting up at 232.5, 233. Matchup overview, score projection, 117.1 for Boston, 108.1 for the Bulls. In the last 10 games, I'd be a little concerned if I'm a Chicago Bulls fan. They're 23rd offensively, 17th defensively. And you might say, Kyle, those aren't that bad. Look at the strength of schedule, 29th. So the Bulls have been struggling against a weak schedule. Now, we know that the Celtics are definitely not playing their best basketball or anything close, but still 15th offensively, 7th defensively against a stronger schedule. So obviously Boston has been playing better, even though we're not seeing Boston's best fastball as of late. Injuries on the Chicago side, we got no Zach LaVine. He's been ruled out. Kobe White is also on the injury report, listed as questionable. On the Boston side, we got a bunch of Qs here. Jason Tatum questionable, Al Horford questionable, Sam Hauser is also listed as questionable. This is a weird one. The injury question marks make it tough to place a bet right now. I will say, I mean, if you subscribe to this channel, you've heard me say this before. Chicago is a tough matchup for the Celtics. They're one of the best above the break 3-point defenses in the NBA. In fact, on the season, they're 3rd in defensive efficiency out there, 2nd in the last 10 games. That's where Boston loves to launch their threes from. They're 1st in frequency on the season. So the Bulls are a tough matchup for the Celtics, what they're trying to do offensively. And like I said before, Boston not playing their best basketball right now. 4-8 against the spread in the last 12 games. So betting Boston hasn't been profitable all year. That hasn't changed. Still has not been profitable to bet the Celtics. Here's the thing. If there's one aspect of this Celtics team I do still trust, it's the defense. And this Bulls team is trending in the wrong direction. They're struggling to score points against bad teams. So on the road against Boston, coming off a loss, I expect the Celtics defense to show up, especially with no LaVine. So I think the Bulls are going to struggle to score. Also, Boston's run always runs an extremely slow pace. The Bulls, a fast-paced team this year, they're slowing down. So I actually wouldn't even be surprised if we see a slower paced game, especially if Kobe White doesn't play, no LaVine. So Bulls team total under. I'm kind of talking myself into that. Is that what, 109.5? I might end up betting that. Bulls team total under 109.5 next. Cleveland on the road in Miami. The Heat are catching 7.5 or 8 points at home, depending on your sportsbook. Total sitting at 227 or 227.5. Let's get into this one. We'll take a look at the matchup overview. Projected score 109.9 to 107.4 in favor of the Cavs. Offensive rating the last 10 games, Cleveland 7th. Defensive rating 26th. It's kind of been the story with Cleveland. The defense has just fallen off. They're 2nd in strength of schedule in that span, though, so they have played a strong schedule. Meanwhile, Miami, last 10 games, 24th offensively, 11th defensively, 26th in strength of schedule. So no question, Cleveland's played the much stronger schedule if we're talking about the last 10 games. Injury reports in this one, Cleveland's still going to be without Dean Wade, still going to be without Karis LeVert, still going to be without Isaac Okoro. Those last two are not new. Dean Wade's kind of recent, though. So Cleveland missing a couple pieces. On the Miami side, Jimmy Butler is doing his Jimmy Butler saga, suspended again. Josh Richardson is still out as well. That's not new. He's been out for a while. So let's get into this one, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one. There's a lot of moving pieces. We do have to mention that Cleveland has struggled with the Heat in their last 6 games against Miami. They're 1-5 straight up, 1-5 against the spread. So Miami has been a problem for this Cavs team. And Jimmy Butler being out, it's not like all hope is lost here for Miami. In their last 10 games without Jimmy Butler, they're 4-6 against the spread, 5-5 straight up. So it's not like the Heat are a blind fade without Jimmy Butler or anything like that. The problem is I really don't have a feel for what kind of team this is without Jimmy Butler. Certainly on the offensive side of the ball, they take a huge hit without Jimmy Butler. I mean, terrible offensive rebounding team without Butler. Offensive rating down at 107 in their last 10 games without Jimmy Butler. But on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, Miami is still a solid team with or without Jimmy Butler. So I'm still inclined to trust the Heat defensively without Butler, but in terms of consistently scoring, without Jimmy Butler out there, this is not an offense I particularly trust. That being said, what do we really think of the Cleveland defense right now? I mean, Monday night against the Pistons, great game. They won, I think, by 19. Defensive rating of 95.8. Effective field goal percentage under 44%. But are we really in a position to trust this Cleveland defense? I mean, let's not forget the 10 games before that. Defensive rating over 120 in the 10 games leading up to that Pistons game. That's worst defense in the NBA territory. Now, what's his name? Mobley did miss a few of those games, so they haven't been 100%. Mobley's back now, but this Cleveland defense, it's tough. It's tough to consider laying 7.5, 8 points on the road for a team playing defense like this. So, like I said, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this game. I really don't know what to expect. I did place a bet. However, though, if you look at the last 10 games, last 5 games here on this graphic, Miami Heat 24th in pace, Cleveland 17th. If you look at the last 5 games, 23rd and 25th. So in recent games, both these teams have been running slow paces. I just mentioned I still trust the Heat defensively, even without Jimmy Butler. Maybe Cleveland's defense is starting to come around with a healthy Evan Mobley. We just saw him play a great game against the Pistons. So we should see a slow-paced game here. 227.5 is a super high total for a Miami Heat game. I know taking an under in a Cleveland Cavs game is kind of tough because they're one of the best offenses in the NBA and the defense has been lacking. But I actually think Cleveland's going to show up defensively. We should see a slow-paced game. So I guess I would lean towards the Heat, but I'm not taking Miami. I took the under at 227.5. Not a big bet. Next game. Clippers on the road in San Antonio. Looks like the Spurs are catching 3 points at home. Total sitting at 223.5 pretty much across the board. Let's take a look at the matchup overview. Projected score 112.6 to 111.8 in favor of the Clippers. Last 10 games, Clips are 18th in offensive rating, first in defensive rating. So the Clippers have been playing some defense. They've been playing some defense all year. They're actually second in defensive efficiency on the season. 24th in strength of schedule. So, okay, the Clips have not played the strongest schedule as of late, and the Spurs are the complete opposite. They are not playing good basketball. In fact, on the defensive side, they've fallen off a cliff. We'll talk about it in a second. But in the last 10 games, third in strength of schedule. So we do have to take note that the Spurs have played a much stronger schedule than the Clippers as of late. As far as injuries go, both these teams are in great shape. No injury designations to the main pieces for the Clippers. Same thing goes for the Spurs. So both these teams should be pretty much at full strength for this one. So let's start with the last time these two teams met. It was New Year's Eve in San Antonio, and the Spurs beat the life out of the Clippers, 122-86. Everyone played for the Clips except for Kawhi Leonard. Obviously, he was still injured at the time. But the Clippers are at full strength here. Went into San Antonio, where this game is being played, got absolutely wiped. That being said, we do have to mention that the Clippers just played a game the night before in New Orleans that went down to the wire. They won 116-113. They won on free throws at the end of the game. So they just played a competitive game down to the wire in New Orleans, immediately fly to San Antonio to play a rested Spurs team. So the Clippers were pretty much at full strength with the exception of Kawhi for this one, but it was a terrible spot. Spurs had the serious rest advantage here. As I'm sure you know, Kawhi Leonard being active is a big deal for the Clips. Since returning from injury in the games he played, the Clips are 7-2 against the spread, 6-3 straight up. So they've looked good when Kawhi plays since he's been back. And then look at the right side of this graphic. Defensive rating in the 9 games Kawhi Leonard has played in. Now, it's only 9 games, but a defensive rating of 102. They're allowing just 102 points per 100 possessions when Kawhi Leonard's on the, well, not when Kawhi Leonard's on the floor, in the games where Kawhi Leonard plays. So when Kawhi is active, this Clippers team is playing some defense, and honestly, a 114.9 offensive rating is still good as hell. That 102.2 defensive rating would be the best in the NBA. 114.9 offensive rating would be like 6th or 7th best. So this Clippers team, yes, it's only 9 games. In the games where Kawhi Leonard is out there, they're pretty dangerous. They might be one of the better teams in the NBA when Kawhi Leonard is on the floor. They're matched up against the Spurs here, and honestly, the question we need to answer when it comes to the Spurs is the defense back? Because Sohan got hurt. He missed 5 games, and in those games, I was talking about it before, Spurs defense fell off a cliff. He missed 5 games. They had a defensive rating over 123. Worst defense in the NBA type of territory. Terrible. Effective field goal percentage over 59% for the Spurs opponent. So the defense just fell off a cliff without Sohan. Now, Sohan's been back for 2 games. Both those games were against the Pacers. One was a great defensive game, and the other one was a terrible defensive game. So I don't know what we can expect from the Spurs defense. If you look at the 8-game stretch before Sohan got hurt, they were looking like one of the better defenses in the NBA. A 106.3 defensive rating is great. Opponent effective field goal percentage down at 48%. So as I'm sure you already know, if you remember, for most of this season, the Spurs had a top 10, even a top 5 defense at times, certainly protecting the rim. So now that Sohan's back, are we going to see this Spurs defense snap back into form? That's the question we need to answer on this side of the ball. So I just mentioned before, I love the Clippers defense when Kawhi Leonard is active. They have a 102 defensive rating in the 9 games he's played. That's elite. So I trust the Clippers defense implicitly. Not a big fan of the Spurs offense, and the Spurs defense I expect to start playing well again now that Sohan is back. So tell me we shouldn't bet an under here. Now, I'm a little worried about the pace. In the last 10 games, the Clippers are 20th in pace, but they're 15th in the last 5 games. So I'm hoping the Clippers aren't speeding things up. Meanwhile, the Spurs, they've been running. In the last 10 games, they're 6th in pace. So I'm a little hesitant to pull the trigger on it, but I think both defenses are going to play well here. So I want to take the under. I don't think I'm going to have the stones to go ahead and take it, but an under 224 is definitely a risky bet if you're expecting the game to be fast-paced. So I don't think I can pull the trigger on it because of the pace, but I really want to bet the under here. Like I said, I'm expecting to see good defensive efforts on both sides of the ball. So under a pass. Next game. Dallas on the road in New Orleans. The Pelicans are catching 3, pretty much 3 across the board. Total sitting at 230.5 or 231. I actually see a couple 231.5s out there. Projected score 113.2 for Dallas, 112.9 for New Orleans. Last 10 games, the Mavs are 19th in offensive rating, 18th in defensive rating, 11th in strength of schedule. Pelicans 13th, 27th, 28th in strength of schedule. So the Pelicans have played an easy schedule as of late, something to take note of. Injuries on the Dallas side, there's still no Luka Doncic, still no Derek Lively. Najee Marshall is listed as questionable. On the New Orleans side, we got no Herb Jones, no Brandon Ingram. These are not new. They've been out for a while. DeJounte Murray's on the injury report, but he's listed as probable. So Pelicans should be in pretty decent shape by Pelican standards. If you look at the injury problems they've had over the course of the year, this is pretty good shape for the Pelicans. All right, so let's get into this one, and we need to start by taking note that the auto fate of the Dallas Mavericks is definitely over. Luka Doncic went down, and for the first 11 games without him, they were 2-9. Against the spread, 3-8 straight up. But in their last 6 games, they're 4-2 against the spread, 3-3 straight up. And also the last 6 games, no Lively either. So the Mavericks have been playing competitive basketball in their last 6 games without Luka and without Lively. And by the way, it's not like they played an easy schedule. You got Oklahoma City twice in there. You got Minnesota. You got Boston. So the Mavericks have been playing competitive basketball. Meanwhile, the Pelicans return home from a 3-game road trip that was a nightmare for New Orleans. They went on the road to Memphis, which is understandable, but on the road at Charlotte and Toronto. 3-game road trip, 0-3 straight up, 0-3 against the spread. So a hellish road trip, and it's disappointing because the 6 games before that, it started to look like the Pellies were getting their shit together. So in my opinion, getting back home off the road trip, maybe a change of pace here for the Pelicans. They can get back to the basketball they were playing week and a half ago. I mean, they were 5-1 against the spread, 5-1 straight up in the previous 6 games before that road trip. If I'm being honest here, I'm strongly considering taking the Pelicans money line here at plus money. These two teams just played 2 weeks ago to the day. The Pelicans won 119-116 in the same building in New Orleans. Now, Zion didn't play in this game, and Kyrie Irving didn't play in this game. So both the teams were shorthanded. I don't know why New Orleans is catching 3.5, maybe just because of one bad road trip. I think now that they're back home, they get back on track. So I would have this one closer to a pick. So if you can get a plus 3.5, think I'm going to bet the Pelis here. I haven't bet this one yet, but I like New Orleans. Give me Pelicans plus 3.5 next game. Minnesota on the road in Phoenix. The Suns are catching 1 or 1.5, depending on your sports book. Total sitting at 217, 217.5, somewhere in there. Projected score 109.3 for Minnesota, 107 for the Suns, so slight lean towards Minnesota. In the last 10 games, I mean, Minnesota's playing better basketball against a significantly stronger schedule, and that's the story here. The Suns' strength of schedule. On the last 10 games, Minnesota's 8th offensively, 6th defensively against the 4th strongest schedule. The Suns are 10th and 13th against the 30th strongest schedule. So the Suns have had a very fortunate stretch of schedule recently. We definitely want to keep our eyes on the injury report in this one. Alexander Walker listed as questionable for Minnesota. He plays about 22 to 24 minutes off the bench, one of their key defensive pieces in that second unit. We definitely want him out there. DiVincenzo still out. That's not new. He's missed 6 games now, so that's not a new injury. On the Phoenix side, Kevin Durant has been added to the report, listed as questionable. Also, Ryan Dunn listed as questionable. So what do we think of this matchup? And we can start out by pointing out that Phoenix owns Minnesota. Remember that trend? Phoenix owns Minnesota. Yeah, that's dead. Minnesota's now beaten them 5 times in a row. In the 15 games before that, Minnesota was 2-13 against the spread, 2-13 straight up. So Phoenix was a problem for Minnesota heading into the playoff series last year. As I'm sure you know, Minnesota swept them. They've played once already this year. Minnesota beat them, although they didn't cover the -4.5. Minnesota ended up winning by 3. So Minnesota's now beaten Phoenix 5 consecutive times. So this trend is kind of flipped. Minnesota definitely has the upper hand as of late. Now, we definitely do have to give the Suns some credit. I mean, they're 5-1 in their last 6 games, just 3-3 against the spread. Like I said, the story with the Suns of strength is strength of schedule. In the last 6 games, they've seen Washington twice, Brooklyn, Detroit. I mean, you got Cleveland in there. And the Clippers. That was a respectable win against the Clippers. But you rewind even farther back than that. You go to the last 10 games, they have the weakest schedule in the NBA. They're 30th in strength of schedule. But still, I don't want to take away credit. In their last 5 games at home, they're 5-0 straight up. They've won 5 consecutive games at home. Just 2-1 against the spread. And what really jumps out here for Phoenix is the offensive production. In their last 10 games, offensive rating over 117, effective field goal percentage close to 58%. In the previous 10 games, they were struggling offensively. If you remember, Booker was hurt, then he came back, then Durant was banged up. But in the last 10 games, they've been pretty healthy for the most part. Beal's been a little banged up, but they've been pretty healthy for the most part, and the offense has looked really good. So Phoenix offensively has been humming as of late. That being said, like I keep mentioning, strength of schedule. What defenses have the Suns seen? Look at their last 10 opponents. What defenses are here? You got the Clippers. They deserve credit for that one. Other than that, you got Atlanta twice. You got Washington twice. You got Utah, Charlotte, Detroit. You got Cleveland, who hasn't been playing any defense. I mean, other than the Clippers game, which was their last one, before that, they played 9 consecutive games against bad defenses. So forgive me if I'm not throwing you a parade for having an offensive rating over 117 in your last 10 games. Look at the defenses you've seen. Now you're going to play Minnesota, who's consistently been one of the best defenses in the NBA all season. On the year, they're 6th in defensive rating, 6th in defensive rating in the last 10 games. And look at their strength of schedule, 4th. So Minnesota's playing elite defense against elite competition. I think the Timberwolves defense should be a huge wake-up call for this Phoenix offense that's kind of been on cruise control, cooking on these bad defenses. So I expect Minnesota defense to be a wake-up call for the Suns offensively. Now, on the other side of the ball, obviously the DiVincenzo injury is significant, but if you look at their offensive numbers in the 6 games since he got hurt, I mean, they still have an offensive rating over 116. They're 4-2 straight up, 3-3 against the spread, effective field goal percentage over 55%. So it's not like we've seen Minnesota's offense just completely fall off since DiVincenzo got hurt. They've still been playing some good basketball. So offensively, they should be able to score on a Phoenix defense that's really not all that good. So I'm on the Wolves here. If Durant doesn't play, I'll be holding all kinds of value. It's currently listed as questionable. I took Minnesota moneyline at -120 next game. Oklahoma City on the road at Golden State. The Warriors are catching 10, pretty much 10 across the board. Total sitting at 228.5 here. Score projection 111 to 110.6. Obviously, model doesn't know Steph Curry's out. On the last 10 games, Oklahoma City 3rd offensively, 3rd defensively, 20th in strength of schedule. Golden State 20th, 25th, 22nd. So yes, Oklahoma City has been playing much better basketball than Golden State. I'm sure you already knew that. Injuries on the Oklahoma City side. Lou Dort. Let me see if there's been any updates to that. 1 second. Refresh the page. Lou Dort's actually been taken off the injury report, so I'll take that questionable off. So just Holmgren. On the Golden State side, we have no Steph Curry, no Draymond Green, no Kuminga. So Golden State definitely missing some pieces here. Obviously, Oklahoma City's been much better than the Warriors. I will say it's tough to consider laying 10 points on the road with a team you know is going to lose the rebounding battle. And I mean, it's not close. In the last 10 games, Oklahoma City 19th in offensive rebounding rate, 23rd in defensive rebounding rate. And if you're thinking, oh, well, Kyle Hartenstein missed some of those games. Okay, but still, look at the rebounding percentage with Hartenstein on the floor. It's definitely better on the offensive side of the ball, but look at the defensive rebounding rate, 68.1% in the last 6 games with Hartenstein on the floor. So the defensive rebounding rate has actually been worse with Hartenstein out there. Oh, just a 6-game sample. But the point I'm trying to make is this Oklahoma City team is a bad rebounding team with or without Hartenstein out there. And Golden State's been rebounding the shit out of the ball. And this is since Draymond got hurt. So not having Draymond, that doesn't kill it. They've still been a great rebounding team even since Draymond Green got hurt. So coming into this one, it's pretty safe to say Golden State's going to win the rebounding battle. So how can you lay 10 points on the road with a team that's going to lose the rebounding battle? That being said, I mean, we're obviously talking about a serious discrepancy here. In the last 6 games, we talked about how Golden State's been rebounding well. Well, they're still 1-5 against the spread, 2-4 straight up. Not to mention Golden State's on a back-to-back. They just finished a game against the Jazz just a few hours ago. And on 0 days rest this year, they're 2-5 against the spread, 3-4 straight up. Oklahoma City with a rest advantage, actually just 4-1 against the spread, 8-1 straight up. So even though I expect Golden State to win the rebounding battle, I don't think I can pull the trigger on the plus 10, but that's definitely the side I want to be on. And look, Oklahoma City, probably one of the best teams in the NBA. I don't think anyone would argue that. We've seen them punt on a few games recently. We just saw them get beat by Dallas with no Luka, no Lively. I don't even know if Kyrie played in that game. They got beat outright. Portland just covered against Oklahoma City. We've seen Oklahoma City punt in some of these lesser games, and Golden State missing all those pieces on 0 days rest. I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma City doesn't show us their best fastball in this one. So it'd be Warriors or pass. Do I actually bet this? Probably not. There's a ton of basketball on. There's also a ton of college basketball. I have a lot of bets open. I don't think I need to force this Warriors plus 10, plus 10.5. It'll be Warriors or pass. We'll talk about it on the live show, which is at 4 p.m. Eastern time. If you want to go see all the bets I have open, head over to KyleKirms.com and click on open bets. Then click on sauce. You'll see everyone on the staff here. You could also see everyone in the group if you click on community, but if you click on sauce, you'll see my open bets. 4 p.m. Eastern time with the live show. Please remember to bet responsibly. Hit me up in the Discord if you need me.